Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
So, welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here. And we're doing a Friday show, something less than normal, but we're not going to be available on Saturday, so we're going to do Friday instead. And we're not going to have any show notes because we actually changed our topic for today last minute because we had some pretty big and infuriating news. I got to say, I have not been this angry in a very long time.
What?
I explained to them I have not been this angry in a very long time.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be a great show, guys. We're both all gassed up. Dire's pissed. I just had mozzarella sticks. He's got a bang. I just got into it with people on Twitter. We're so ready and jazzed for this show. Get excited. Get excited.
But before we get into why I am so furious and why Fox is also angry, we're going to do a funny video, I hear, to set the tone.
Well, we got a few other like house cleaning stories before we get to the main one.
Yeah, don't worry. We gotta get people to actually join the show before we get into the meat and potatoes.
Well, if they haven't joined the show yet, they're gonna be really sorry that they missed this video because this is a real prime video. I want to make sure that the sound is as up as it can be because this one needs it. All right, are you ready to? Hopefully you can hear it. Let me make sure I can. I'm sharing the screen out to you though. I was sharing the screen. I don't know if I was sharing the sound. Well, I guess let me know. Can you see it? Let me know if you can't hear it.
Okay.
And we're playing. We'll probably watch this twice because it's funny.
There's this new social media app called Parler getting a lot of attention because conservatives are saying they're leaving Twitter and Facebook, going off to Parler because they believe Parler's a safer space for them. What we're seeing is even more of a bunker mentality in right-wing media, and ultimately that's not good for the country.
No, it's not good. It's a threat to democracy that these people are in echo chambers and they're getting fed a diet of lies, essentially.
What? Like Twitter already does for left-wingers?
Yeah. So, that was, from my understanding, that was, actually what he said, but Mark Dice just, revoiced it, how we all hear Brian tell it in our head.
Okay, the irony of them saying that it's so terrible that one political party is, creating a echo chamber bad for democracy. I mean, I agree with echo chambers being bad for democracy, but they might want to look at what Twitter does in general.
We'll
what
play that.
Facebook, YouTube does in general.
We'll go for that one more time, just to make sure it really drive home. Brian has a lot to say, and he needs you to hear it.
There's this new social media app called Parler getting a lot of attention because conservatives are saying they're leaving Twitter and Facebook, going off to Parler because they believe Parler's a safer space for them. What we're seeing is even more of a bunker mentality in right-wing media, and ultimately that's not good for the country.
No, it's not good. It's a threat to democracy that these people are in echo chambers and they're getting fed a diet of lies, essentially.
It's so funny because it's this actually very much mirrors classic communist mentality where the communists will fuck everything up and then people are like, yeah, I'm not into that, I'm gonna leave and go somewhere else, and the communists are like, no, but you can't leave, you have to fucking stay here, don't leave. Just deal with it. That's
You actually are a traitor to the country for leaving the bad situation that they've made. No joke. That's how they treat you.
Oh no, that's actually very true. So as some of you guys probably know, I've told the story before, but I went to had the I wouldn't call it a pleasure, but I had the experience of going to Havana, Cuba in 2012 as one of the first American civilians to set foot on the island in like almost 50 years. So while I was there, our one of our guides that was with us is a Cuban-born American citizen. He came over here when he was younger, but he was going back with us, and he was explaining to us when he went back all the problems that he had getting through customs in the airport, and it's because they look at him like he is a traitor, that he betrayed the country, and it's very they've cultivated this hostility to anybody that escapes.
Yes.
And most of that's a jealousy too. A lot of that's driven by jealousy.
Partly, but the government, they realize that, oh, once we create a hellscape, people don't want to live here anymore, and if people leave, that means all the workers and all of the taxpayers, they leave too. So they start trying to restrict movement, and that's where the Berlin Wall comes in. They got to trap you in there. If your country is so terrible, people are fighting to leave, maybe your system of government and your is bad. People are fighting to get into America, even with all of our problems. Maybe that means capitalism is good.
Yeah, we gotta build walls to keep people out because it's so good here. Even though apparently we're like the most racist place in the entire universe, but so
racism works, I guess.
Yeah, you know what, Dyer, you might be onto something.
No.
But you guys heard it first. So no, but yeah, America's got capitalism, the apex of capitalism. The sorry state that we have of capitalism in this country, still the apex for the world. We have to put up walls to stop people from rushing in here, and all of the communist countries have to put up walls to keep people from fleeing. Very fun.
Yes.
So
now we have an update on a previous story on our previous show, actually.
So on Wednesday night, we covered a fake news bit that I went through and analyzed. It was a supposed analysis of the quote-unquote, not true, was it Dominion, the raw voter data from Dominion Systems, and which is, as we all know, the infamous vote counting company that ran a lot of the states voting over the last election, and there was verified at least 3 times where the Dominion system actually flipped the votes incorrectly from Trump to Biden, or from the Republican giving the Democrat the win. There is 3 confirmed cases of that actually happening. Now, what we went through on Wednesday was there was a company that was alleging that they had the nationwide Dominion voter data, and that they had performed an analysis on it that showed that like 4 million votes had flipped from Trump to Biden, and they even had the state level breakdown, and they were showing all the swing states, like how many votes were stolen from Trump and given to Biden. And so that was kind of making the rounds on Tuesday and Wednesday night. And so I on Wednesday night, I went through that. I showed you guys what was wrong with their code, what was wrong with the database that they were pulling, that they thought that they were pulling raw data out of the voting machines, but they were not, which obviously means that they weren't getting what if Dominion was changing the votes, which again, this doesn't disprove the fact that this doesn't disprove the idea that Dominion glitched out. It's still likely, but this data set didn't prove that. This data set was a different data set. It was the aggregate. It wasn't the raw voter data. So we showed that. We also showed how their counting program, as short as it was extremely flawed, and it was so flawed that it actually missed that if that database had been raw Dominion data, that it would have actually shown that not Biden had stolen votes from Trump, but actually Trump had stolen votes from Biden, if we were to believe that database was what they said it was. What's that?
Awkward.
So obviously we didn't think that Trump stole 2 million votes, or that Dominion flipped 2 million votes from Biden to Trump, because that would really go against what my bias is. So we just have to assume that database isn't what they thought it was. And the reason why is because they were purposefully only counting the times that Trump's votes rolled backwards, and they were ignoring the times that Biden's votes rolled backwards. And so I was able to show you guys on Wednesday night how both votes were rolling backwards throughout the night, and I was able to explain to you why that might happen, and just the idea that it was happening to both Biden and Trump meant that it was probably something that was a normal behavior for that database, whatever they were doing with it. And then even if you thought that it wasn't a normal behavior, if you thought that, okay, well, it's stealing votes from Trump still. Well, if you go through the math on it, it actually, again, it's not really stolen votes, but if you pretended that their analysis was correct, it would have been that Trump had stolen more votes from Biden. So I went through that and I showed you that. And the point of me going through and showing you that on Wednesday night is because that was kind of picking up some virality. I was trying to, getting some steam on Twitter. And I wanted to show you guys, we're not like the left where we just look at stuff and, parrot it. We're not NPCs. We think through things. And so I was able to show you guys why that was an incorrect analysis. And it was like, they also said mean things to me on Twitter when I said, hey, I think your analysis is wrong, which implies to me that they maybe had some malintent in spreading that around because they weren't open to having questions about, hey, I think that your code's wrong here, and I can prove that your code's wrong here. So we also talked about that the reason why I wanted to debunk that is because I wanted to give you guys a warning, especially on that particular accusation of voter fraud, but just other ones in general, to be vigilant and not be flooding the airwaves with fraud, like incorrect accusations of fraud. Like that was a fake accusation of fraud. And if we are flooding Twitter and Facebook and all these places with fake accusations of fraud, Trump's team is trying to get through the real fraud right now. And if they have to go through a bunch of fake claims as well, that's wasting their time. And if pumping out fake claims, even by accident, what's that?
And they have very limited time to do
this. Even by accident, if you're pumping out fake claims, you're wasting the time of Trump's team, and you're making it more and more likely that he's not going to be able to do anything about the Joe Biden presidency. As slim of a margin as that might be, you're helping Biden out. So, again, the point of going through that was because of that. I don't want the airways flooded with fake accusations of fraud because that takes away from being able to investigate the real ones. Well, we did this on Monday or on Wednesday night, and I guess Trump was he's busy that night because Trump did not watch the show as he normally does. Hi, Trump. And wouldn't you know it? Trump tweeted out the analysis on Thursday morning. Oh no!
See, never miss one show, man.
Never miss one show. Okay, so this is exactly what I didn't want to happen. Now, to be specific, Trump didn't tweet out the exact analysis that we were covering. So that was the analysis that we were covering was a particular company that was looking and analyzing data from Edison. Edison is a live data aggregator. So the voting data is a live data set. So they aggregate it and then make that data feed available to places like media companies so that they can pull the latest up-to-date voter totals. So the analysis that we were debunking was that Edison data is not Dominion direct data, and any analysis performed on that Edison data cannot prove that votes were stolen from Trump, because if you think that's what the Edison data shows, then you have to look at the votes that were stolen from quote unquote Biden. And again, like I said, more votes appear to have been stolen from Biden. Now, none of these votes were actually stolen. I keep saying that because that's what they're implying this database shows. This database has nothing to do. You cannot determine if votes were switched in this database. That's not how this database works. So anybody else doing a similar analysis on the Edison data is going to have that same problem where they cannot determine if votes were stolen in that. And then also, if you ignore the votes that were stolen backwards from Biden, then you're not really doing an honest analysis of it. And so we have OA and America News Network, or One American News Network. They put out another group who did the exact same analysis on the Edison data. And that group also purposefully omitted looking to see if Biden also had votes that were rolled backwards. because of that, it looks like Trump's had a bunch of votes stolen from him, even though, again, that's not what that database shows. So Trump saw this, and then on Thursday morning, Trump retweeted it out that Dominion had stolen 221,000 votes in Pennsylvania that were switched. That were switched from Trump to Biden. So I recognize these numbers as being very close to what the numbers look like when you analyze the Edison data incorrectly. It's such a hard story to talk about because I have to explain that, like, one, the database isn't what they think it is, but two, even if it was, they're analyzing it incorrectly. It's just like really painful for me. But here we are. This is the danger of it. So this was on 11 a.m. on November 12th. We had our show debunking this very thoroughly. If you go back and watch our show from Wednesday night, like there is, I'm not gonna like say mean things to you on Twitter if you call me out on it. But like if you can prove that my analysis was wrong, please do, because I said I really wanted that to be true. That's my bias, but it just wasn't, and it was very. Like 8 levels, it wasn't true. Like there were so many reasons why that analysis was bad. And so we had that at approximately 11-ish p.m. On November Eastern on November 11th. And then about 12 hours later, Trump retweets the same analysis. And, that's really unfortunate. So do you have anything to say on that?
I mean, any time spent on that is going to be in a courtroom is going to be wasted, and it'll be one more. It'll be used to discredit when it is shown to be false, which it will be. It will be used to discredit the legitimate claims. Now, there is other evidence that Dominion is changing votes, and that there's a good justification to look into those machines and actually see the data on those machines. But they could just investigate this part of the claim and then say, see what you were guys looking for doesn't exist. So any complaint about Dominion is false. Yeah.
So here you can see in the OAN article, they've got Edison Research, that they analysis of data obtained from Edison Research. I went to Edison Research. There is only one pool of data you can pull for election night, so I know that that's what they took. Again, I recognize some of these totals that they say got switched as the proper way to improperly count the numbers, and you get to their numbers. So I'm familiar with how they got to those. And then you've got and one of the reasons why Trump is going after this is because you've got OAN. Which is, it's one of those new media things. I think that they wanted to be a Fox. I don't watch them personally. I heard they wanted to be a Fox News, not a Fox, because, that's not cool.
That'd be kind of your territory.
Yeah. But yeah, they try to style themselves as a Fox News. They're relatively new. A lot of people on the left and centrist will say that they're just like really bad fake news, and I kind of like don't disagree with that. And so they're the ones that are helping pump this story out, this analysis out, and they're wasting time on that. And then Trump or people in Trump's circles see this and they're like, "Ooh, like I want to get in on that," and they think it's real. And yeah, I've got a particular set of skills, but I mean, Direwolf Media isn't exactly well-resourced, and it only took me about 4 hours to do this analysis, and most of that 4 hours was like 3 hours of downloading the data.
And a couple hours of complaining to me.
Yes. And then like writing my rants for Wednesday night. So this was not an impossible task to do. This is certainly something that could have been, if we were resourced with the kind of money that like, something that OAN size would have, which just doesn't even need to be a lot of money, but you could just hire out a programmer and just pay them for 4 hours or 8 hours, might be a couple $100 and say, hey, like run an analysis on this data for us. And they would have come back and said, no. But these guys didn't even try, which is, again, really unfortunate. And that was my greatest fear on Wednesday night, was that somebody big would pick up on it. I was very worried that someone like Crowder might pick up on it, because Crowder picked up on Sharpiegate like pretty quickly, and that turned out to not be true. But he didn't know that. He's just asking questions. But I was really worried that they might pick up on this, or something like a Daily Wire, or even Fox News, or like a Tucker Carlson, because if Tucker Carlson talks about this, like Trump would be all fucking over it. Which I guess it didn't matter. I guess he was all over it anyways. But that was my big fear, and I wish you guys out there watching us. Don't mean to brag, but you guys are getting some good. You guys get some good analysis. I think we do a really good job, and I wish that we had a little bit further reach, because I think that we do. I think that if we did this full time, we'd do a lot better than some of these quote unquote bigger guys.
Yeah. Well, say la vie, we have real jobs.
Yes. I'm gonna watch this video real quick here of whatever she has to say. So this is apparently the OAN report on this.
Election systems across the U.S. are found to have deleted millions of votes cast for President Trump. According to an unaudited analysis of data obtained from Edison Research, states using Dominion voting systems may have switched as many as 435,000 votes from President Trump to Joe Biden. Now, the author also finds another 2.7 million Trump votes appear to have been deleted by Dominion, including almost 1 million votes in Pennsylvania. Election system.
Yeah, so we went through on Wednesday that wasn't true. And then I gave you the audited analysis, ironically. I wonder what she makes. I bet she makes a lot more than Dyer pays me.
That's probably very true.
Yeah, so we gave you the audited analysis, which was that she said Edison Research, which is the data that we went through. Again, watch Wednesday's show if you guys want to see like the real detailed breakdown. I think we spent about an hour on that, really going through, and really, I am glad that I went through that so thoroughly, because at first I was like, well, maybe we can go hit some of the quick and easy reasons why this is just wrong. Like there was a couple things that were wrong with it that were showstoppers right off the bat, but I went through every single angle that it was wrong from, which again was surprising how many angles it was wrong from. That again, not only was the data not what they thought it was, they also analyzed that data wrong. like you didn't even do your bad analysis correctly.
You can't even do a bad job correctly.
Yeah, like so. We went through that as thoroughly as we possibly could. So I'm very pleased with that segment. I'm just very disappointed that, again, I mean, we're out here doing good work, and it's just nobody, not getting out to the people that matter, I guess, or the people who have platforms. And that's what's really frustrating is, not to like whinge about not having enough viewers, but someone like us, it's we're reaching out into the tens of people, but you got OAN's got like an actual channel, and like they got investors, and they got like cameras and all that stuff, and they got this like allure of looking professional and stuff like that, and you got a bunch of people that watch them. That's the OAN's like a big network for your kind of conservatives that have gotten tired of Fox News. It's just really unfortunate that you got people with that kind of reach, and that's the kind of crap that they put out. And it's not really that difficult of an analysis if you know what you're doing. And there's certainly more people in the world that know at least enough to do that than just me. So, I mean, I am pretty good, but I'm not like exclusively good.
Let's be honest, though, you didn't really stretch your extent of your abilities.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, just like, yeah, like that's like a very basic level of my skill set was to analyze that. And I think that any of your regularly capable data people could have analyzed that very quickly. And I would have even loved to see one of these, like a CNN or a Democrat group, if they wanted to go through, they could have done the same analysis and explained it and said, hey, look, all these conservatives are dumb. They're spreading out fake news, and here's the proof. The problem is that they never need proof that we got fake news. They just say we got fake news. It's just anything that we say is like, well, conservative people, like they're always spreading fake news.
They've always put the term without evidence after any phrase.
Yeah.
And automatically it's a misinformation.
So there's it's just unfortunate. And then now you get Trump tweeting this out, and I'm sure Trump's like a dog with a bone, so I'm sure that he is tasking at least a couple of his lawyers to look into this, and now his team is actually, again, the nightmare scenario for me on Wednesday was that the Trump team would waste time on this when I did it for you, Trump. Give me a call, Trump. I got the analysis for you. You don't need to waste time on this one. And now they're wasting time on it. When, again, I think it's fully possible that Dominion Systems did switch up votes, but the data set from Edison won't show you that. So they are now looking in, and this also anchors the conversation as, well, you guys looked through the Edison data and it didn't show that Dominion switched votes. So you guys, that's it. Dominion didn't show votes. And so they run the risk of accidentally, quote unquote, proving innocence where there is none, because they won't be able to use the Edison data to show the votes were swung. And so then that'll just become, well, they looked at the Dominion data and the Dominion data didn't show it. So it's good to go, when, again, they're confusing the Edison data with what the Dominion data would be. So this is like a real nightmare. This was not good for them to have done that. And it's very disappointing. All right. Well, I keep complaining about.
We've driven the point home.
Yes. Grr. All right.
Oh no, the grrs come later.
Okay. Do you want me to read you? Actually, before we go on, this was going to be a different show tonight, but we changed it kind of last minute. And we're still going to do the show next week that we were going to do tonight, so do not fear. But what we were going to do tonight, there is some time-sensitive things that we wanted to just put out there, is new media, which is, I guess, what we're calling. That's the new name that conservative media is trying to call. Like places like the Daily Wire or Crowder is calling them new media. So, new media had some pretty big gains this week. A lot of interesting stuff. So very big congratulations to Crowder, Steven Crowder of Louder with Crowder. Louder with Crowder is officially larger than the Young Turks this week. They surpassed the Young Turks in viewership on YouTube. I think it was a subscribers.
Moment, really.
What's that?
I mean, it's a bittersweet moment because Louder with Crowder has done a lot of funny bits with the Young Turks, particularly Jank Yogurt. So they made a promise that they wouldn't punch down, and now that they finally are bigger than the Young Turks, that means they no longer can mock them by their own moral code.
Yeah, so Steven did a pretty heartfelt segment the other day on, surpassing them finally. And he kind of reviewed, his history with the Young Turks, but he was a real small YouTuber, and he was kind of working for Fox back when he was younger. And the Young Turks had harassed him quite a bit and punched down at him a lot. And he just felt he went through how it feels to be a struggling small creator and just have this giant behemoth of the Young Turks. Which I know, if you guys don't know what the Young Turks used to be, even 5 years ago, they are not anywhere close to the state that they used to be, just in size and reach and even quality. And Steven went into that a little bit. But just his history of the Young Turks always going after him. And then as he got bigger and started catching up to them, they stopped talking to him. They wouldn't have him on the show. They didn't want to do anything with him because he was starting to grow. And then he started being able to punch back at them a little bit, and then they still, even when Steven's doing skits about him, he bought a bunch of ad space that would play ad rolls on the front of all the Young Turks videos that were Crowder's Young Turks skits. He did a whole bunch of stuff to prank him. He went and did his Jank yogurt impersonations and all that stuff. So he gave some explanations about that, but he had always said, he didn't want to be like them, like what Dyer was saying, that when he got bigger than the Young Turks, he didn't want to be punching down at smaller creators, which is kind of funny that he's like, well, now I'm a big YouTuber, kind of brush my shoulders off a little bit. I don't want to pick on the little guys like the Young Turks.
Which is, again, it's digging at them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still like a passive aggressive way of getting at him. But one of the things that Crowder did mention is that this was like a really bittersweet kind of passing. He's like, I've dreamed about this for like years back in the day. But as we got closer and closer, and now the day is here where we've surpassed them. It's really kind of bittersweet because the Young Turks is just a absolute shadow of its former self. It was always very far left progressive, but even like within the space of far left progressivism, they are really just living on life support right now. Like the only reason why they have any traction at all is because YouTube pushes them as one of the top preferred creators when nobody actually wants to watch them. They are funded to the gills with foreign and domestic money. They have just oodles and oodles of cash flowing through them, and they can't even do better than what Crowder's doing, and he's completely self-funded. With a much smaller team, and certainly does not have the help of the YouTube algorithm making him a preferred creator. Certainly not. So big congratulations to him. He's obviously been a big inspiration. Certainly a good commentator that a lot of people are familiar with. He's been a real buoy to the conservative movement and the conservative culture. Conservatives have traditionally forsaken the culture, and Crowder was a big part of the culture war and getting that up to speed. So big shout out to him for that. That's great. It's been a big inspiration to us all, and it's good. It's good that someone like Crowder is able to get that big, because that means that we will continue to have those voices, those ideas, and those platforms moving out into the future, and we're going to definitely need them the next 4 years and further than that. So, in addition to Crowder, who has his ideological origin is from Andrew Breitbart, who the late great Andrew Breitbart, but Breitbart also had another employee, a little Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro has he's had the Daily Wire going for quite a few years now. They are growing like weeds as well. They do very well on Facebook. Again, similar to Crowder, they are going so hard against what the algorithms want, and they're still able to push through that noise. They have a very diverse content set, which Dyer and I disagree with a lot on with some of the other hosts on there, but nevertheless they are picking up a pretty wide swath of the conservative movement, and the one of the reasons why Dyer and I don't like some of their other hosts are because the conservatism now is such a big tent, and there is sections of it that we don't necessarily agree with and other sections that don't agree with us on certain things, and the Daily Wire has done objectively, they've done a good job of having hosts that can speak to all those various subsections and make sure that they are all, rallying on relatively the same page, which is a good. Having such a big tent, it's good to have something that can kind of unify and translate the voices between those disparate groups that are now on the conservative side. They have had some news this week as well. They are doing some kind of partnership / acquisition of PragerU. So that's good for them. And then they are also going to be hiring on Candace Owens full time. Candace has been a recent kind of a firebrand for the conservative movement. But Dyer actually had some. You got some of her deeper history on it. This kind of goes into the idea that there's some of the hosts at the Daily Wire we're not fully into.
So again, this isn't to discredit what she's doing now, but it is to recognize that she hasn't always had the same politics as she has now. So she used to be when she was younger and dumber, a more progressive liberal type, and she had championed some of those causes before she learned more about them. And she's actually talked about this before, because she was more like the default Democrat, because that's just what was expected of her, right? and she had made some poor choices by, like, creating a website that was to basically, the intent of it was to attach someone's real identity to their online life.
It was a doxing site.
Yes. So if you found out information about someone, you could add it to an archive. Basically, it was each person had a spot on this website. Anyone could add anything to it, which was the problem because there was no verification of it being true either, and you could easily attach fake social media posts to someone's profile and accuse them of being anything. So she obviously had some bad judgment there, and that went along with the whole liberal idea of cancel culture. She was a maybe not intended, like, well, maybe it may have been well intended, but she created a tool for cancel culture, which she then she stopped the website, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this to say she's bad or that it was a bad idea to bring her on. I'm just saying that when someone goes from being a liberal Democrat activist to becoming a conservative activist, I'm always a little concerned and looking for, have they gained principles, or are they just going with what is profitable and popular?
Yeah, so we've talked about walkaways a lot on this show, and I'm going to eventually be bringing this conversation back to another particular walkaway. But actually, one of my concerns with the walkaways was that they are dangerous when left to their own devices in leadership positions, because of what Dyer said is they may have left the left, but usually, actually universally, they will leave the left because the left turned on them, and it doesn't take a genius to pull your hand off the hot stove. There's no bravery in running away. So the walkaways, well, they might want to pretend that that's a brave movement. And again, I'm not going to tell people don't walk away from the Democrats. Like,
definitely do.
Yeah, definitely do walk away from them. But when you come over here, be prepared to listen. Don't immediately try to jump into a leadership position. I see a lot of these former leftist activists that are now quote unquote conservative activists or right-leaning activists, and it's like no. You've not been in the study of conservative principles for your whole life. You've not even been in the study of conservative principles for a couple of years. Like, you need to you were even fighting against all of our thought leaders previous to a couple of minutes ago. The walkaways need to not enter into positions of leadership. They need to be in positions where they are, where they are pulling more Democrats over. That's a perfectly fine place to put them. They can be telling their story and why they left. That's perfectly fine. They can be having constructive discussions with conservatives. That's great too. But there's a whole bunch of things that they can do. That's great. But mostly they need to be listening and or helping the movement, but not leading the movement. The reason why they aren't qualified to lead the movement is because of that issue of principles, where there's a lot of concern that because they don't have those principles, that when they go into a leadership position in a conservative movement, that they run the very high risk of accidentally recreating a leftist movement, because the leftist principles are all that they know. Now, why am I happy that Candace is going into Daily Wire? Well, I'm very happy for that, because Daily Wire is a very well-established hierarchy of several people with different kinds of conservative values that all over, again, like I said, that all of that broad big tent conservatism, they've got kind of a personality for each section of it, which is great. And they've already got a good established hierarchy.
Into learning principles, right?
Yes.
What better place?
Exactly. So, and I definitely think that Candace has done a great job of learning throughout the years. So that's fine too. But she does a really good job of pulling more people out of the Democrat Party. She's really great at explaining that. And now she has a large platform from which she can tell her story and encourage leftists to come back over to the Republican or the conservative side. And then just to make sure that she doesn't forget what she's doing and accidentally reverts back to leftist principles, she's at a good, stable platform where they will be able to self-correct her. That's perfect place to put her. Now, if she wanted to start her own media outlet, that might be a problem. One person who started a media outlet recently that isn't a problem, though, is Sargon of Akkad. So that's our third That's our third this week. Again, all this stuff happened this week, so it's a very exciting week for new media. Sargon of Akkad, who I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with, also known as Carl Benjamin, which I believe he will be now going by Carl Benjamin a lot more now. Carl Benjamin started the Lotus Eaters, which is basically a full-on media organization. He launched it this week. He's been planning this for quite a while. He's been building it for quite a while. So Lotus Eaters, if you guys are interested in it, go to lotuseaters.com or look for them on YouTube. Again, Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin's going to be doing with that. They've already got a daily podcast, which, because they're over in England, is at 8 a.m. Eastern for me, which is great because there's always a gap at 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for me. When I'm trying to find something to listen to at work. So that's perfect. Now I got Sargon. They are also having, he's got a lot of people that he's got hired full time. They have an actual physical office. I mean, he really went all out on this. They're going to be doing other kinds of, like kind of individual story videos, like reports. They've got articles that they're putting out. And then they're going to have premium content tiers and all that sort of stuff. Highly encourage you to go check them out. I would highly encourage you to. I would endorse that Sargon is likely to put out good stuff, and I would endorse subscribing to one of his premium tiers if that's something that interests you. Again, this sort of stuff, it only stays around if we fund it. So if you see something that you like, you got to fund it. I'm a Mug Club member. I help fund Crowder. I was a Daily Wire subscriber for a little while, but I wasn't overly pleased with the bulk of their content. Just again, that was some of the just mismatches with some of their producers, their personalities. Not that I don't like them, it's just I don't want to pay for it. So that's something I chose to do. I will highly likely do the paid tier for Sargon because I like his content and I think he's a good, again, very long time principled conservatism, libertarianism type ideals. Again, he's got kind of the British flavor to it. We'll forgive him for that. Red coat. But that's the kind of stuff that we like to see. And again, Sargon's not a walk away. So the idea that he might accidentally fall into leftist principles, when he makes his media company, that's just not going to happen. He's going to revert back to what he knows, which is libertarian conservatism stuff. So that's great. Good for him. So that's great. We got three new media, budding empires, for sure. Direwolf Media is right behind him, I'm sure. That's great. That's what we need. We're certainly going to need those things moving into the future. So check them out. Be excited for that and help them grow if that's something that strikes your interest. Now there was, I'm forgetting somebody, Dyer. Who am I forgetting? There's somebody else. There was somebody else who also recently made a new media company.
But it's not quite as laudable.
Who was that? Who also made a new media company?
Tim Pool.
Tim Pool. Oh, I forgot about Tim Pool. So this was the story that we were going to do tonight, and I'll just give you a little taste of what we were going to go over, and we are going to save this for next week and thoroughly go through it at some point. So Tim Pool also made a new media company that is not quite doing as hot as some of our trusty conservatives.
You might describe it as having recreated the mainstream media.
Yes, it's a hot mess. So the Tim is I guess I would call him a walk away, or he calls himself a disaffected liberal, which is that's slang for walk away, I guess. And Tim's new media company, which is called Scanner, SCNR. Formerly, it was Subverse, which apparently had a name overlap with a spicy game. Spicy game. So Tim's a walkaway, and as we had said, one of the problems with walkaways is that because they were smart enough to pull their hand away from the hot stove when the left came for them, the left attacked them, that doesn't take a lot of intelligence to pull your hand off the hot stove. It doesn't take bravery to run away, and that's Tim in spades. So Tim will very often accidentally revert back into his liberal his leftist ideals that he had to flee from, and he doesn't even realize he's doing it because that's what he knows. He's only had the idea of real libertarianism. I know he thinks he's been a libertarian forever. He certainly has not. Into libertarianism, pseudo-conservatism, again, moderateism, whatever the hell he is. He's only had that for, a couple of years at most. And so when he wants to take a leadership position, he's the kind of person that I would be concerned about reverting back to accidentally recreating all the leftist principles that they fled. And so when Tim created Scanner, I had my eyes ready for that, and surprise, surprise, that is exactly what Tim did. So Tim spends all day, every day on his own show talking about how awful the mainstream media is. They don't do any fact checking. They're just zealots for the left. All the stuff they're bad at. They have all these crazy conspiracy theories about Trump. They have no, they're doing activist journalism, going after people, not really caring what the story is. And wouldn't you know it, Tim Pool's media outlet, Scanner, is accidentally worse. It is the most vicious media outlet we have ever seen. So we are going to go through all of that next week if you guys are interested in that and hearing what is wrong with Tim Pool's Scanner and why it perfectly encapsulates my warnings about walkaways and why they are dangerous and why they should not be put in positions of power. Tim Pool perfectly encapsulates that. We just had 3 examples of really great conservative outlets and all the different ways that they were able to handle creating a new media. And next week, we're going to go through a very thorough breakdown of how that all goes very wrong when you have a walkaway leftist trying to do the same thing. So stay tuned for that. Spoiler alert, Scanner said mean things to me on Twitter today. So if you guys want to see people say mean things to me on Twitter, if you guys want to see people say mean things to me on Twitter again, tune in next week.
Or just send mean things to Fox and yourself. That also works. Please be mean to Fox. Always.
I'm gonna cry. All right, Dyer, just because you did that, I'm going to force you to have to go through this story again. I'm gonna read it for you, and then you can feel free to jump in with angry reactions at any time. When you are not angrily reacting, I'll read it. When you are, I'll stop. Okay?
Well, why do you think I might be angry? What possibly give you the impression that this story might make me angry?
I probably because you like Hulk smashed your car keys in your hand today while you were reading.
That's actually good context. While I was ranting to Fox, having just heard about the story, I literally I was gripping my key fob to my car so hard I broke into 3 little pieces, and now it's broken. I need a new key fob.
So you guys buckle up. Dyer, did you drink your Bang?
I did.
Chug that thing. You're ready to go. Right. Okay, so the primetime story tonight is from Defense One, which I guess that's some kind of media outlet about defense. Okay, so this is Ambassador James Jeffrey is a special representative for the Syria engagement and special envoy to the Global Coalition to defeat the Islamic State. He speaks during a news conference with the State Department in Washington Thursday, November 14th, 2019. That's where this photo is from. So this interview, though, that we're talking about today in this article is from, I think it's yesterday. Yeah, November 12th. So, title, Outgoing Syria Envoy Admits Hiding U.S. Troop Numbers, Praises Trump's Mideast Record. Let me read that again.
That he praised Trump.
Outgoing Syria Envoy admits hiding U.S. troop numbers.
So,
sounds
he
fishy.
Lied
Let's see, there's a little quote here. It says, quote, "We were always playing shell games," says Ambassador Jim Jeffries, who also gives advice to President-elect Biden. Oh, that's fun. All right, so 4 years after signing the now infamous Never Trump letter, which, if you guys might remember that, way back when, beginning of the Trump administration, there was a open letter that went around that said, "Orange man bad," and a bunch of people very proudly signed it. This Jim Jeffries guy was one of them. So 4 years after signing the now infamous Never Trump letter condemning the then presidential candidate Donald Trump as a danger to America, retiring diplomat Jim Jeffrey
joke. This
is
guy is the
recommending
real
that the
danger to
incoming
America.
Biden administration stick with Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East. Oh, so he must think that Trump did a good job. But even as he praises the president's support of what he describes as a, quote, successful realpolitik approach to the region, he acknowledges that his team routinely misled senior leaders
Committed
about troop levels
treason.
in Syria.
So this guy, because
Are you there,
he
Dyer?
thought, yeah, can you hear me?
Why
Can you hear
can't I
me?
hear you?
My mic is working.
Are you talking? Can you text me? Oh no. Dyer's left the call. Hold on a second. I'm betting Dyer got really
Can you
excited.
hear me now?
Are you there, Dyer?
Can you hear me now? Hello.
Why can't I hear you? Crap. Oh.
Why?
I unplugged my microphone.
Okay. He committed treason. That's what he did. He decided that it wasn't the president that decides foreign policy. Just like many of the other Obama-era holdovers, they felt it was their purpose to, since they didn't have their president in control, that they were going to lead foreign policy and keep him out of it. That's why he had to go, when it came to Ukraine, he had to take unconventional means, because the apparatus, the bureaucracy was actively working against him. Obama had put in a bunch of loyalists. He basically, this is going to become important later on in the story when they're bitching about this, but he fired a bunch of people at the top levels of the military and replaced them with loyalists. This guy is one of them. So this guy, he lied to the American people and lied to Trump back in 2019 when Trump had said he wanted to pull us out of the Middle East, pull us out of Syria. He said, okay, we're pulling him out. There's only 200 soldiers there, which was a lie. There actually was still thousands of soldiers there, but they were being labeled in different missions so that they could hide the fact that they were actually actively operating in the Middle East. So because of that lie, Trump thought, he was misled to think that we didn't have troops currently there, and was misled about the mission that they were doing there. Those 200 soldiers were apparently were supposed to have just been there for a observe, advise role for. Again, I don't think it was advertised to Trump this way, but basically, America has been funding and arming and training the next ISIS. It's a continuation of the Obama policy. The reason why ISIS exists is because we funded, we trained, we aided them, and then when they went outside our control, they became our enemy. We're fighting people we armed. That's another one of the legacies of the Obama era foreign policy in the Middle East, is we create a monster that we then have to go and fight later on. Well, actually, we don't need to fight. They want us to. So this guy here has led to American soldiers being killed and injured in combat in the Middle East. And he has also led to the continuing involvement of U.S. soldiers being involved in the killing of civilians in that country for no fucking good reason.
And just generally continued the unrest and the instability in the region, which is only forcing them up into Europe, which has been, as funny as it is to point and laugh at Europe, I mean, like their migrant crisis is a crisis for us. Well, no, it's a crisis for us as well, because that is swinging the demographic and the political acumen of the nations there, and that is causing them to make policies that are not as friendly to the U.S. as we would like. They
don't care about the human effect of these wars. They don't care about the cost of our American soldiers being injured or killed. They don't care about the sacrifices that they're asking us to make. My brothers and sisters are willing, when we join the military, to sacrifice our freedoms and our autonomy, be separated from our families in shitty conditions for long periods of time, and we go through hardships that most people in America will never live through, and I'm fine with that. But we're willing to accept that because we think that we're going to help our country and help our people. But instead, we have shitty assholes like this guy, treasonous assholes, who have decided for his purposes, not our country. He wants to have us over there fighting his war, not America's war, not a war that was authorized by the Congress, not authorized by the president. It was authorized by some nameless bureaucrat that he better not avoid jail time for this. But what bothers me is he was so flippant in saying that he lied to the president, lied to the American people, lied to the media about what he was doing, and it put off in this article as being like funny how he got one over on Trump.
Well, and it's we see this a lot with the long-term establishment where they have so lost connection with reality, and all they know is their bureaucratic corruption, that you'll have people like Joe Biden who very proudly proclaim that he, in a publicly recorded event, he'll very proudly proclaim that as vice president in the Obama administration, he illegally leveraged $1 billion of taxpayer money to enrich his family and protect his son. Like, he'll very proudly proclaim that on camera, and then this guy will very proudly proclaim that he's committing actual treason, a military coup against the government, against the president. And it's it's especially awful for guys like you, Dyers. You didn't even realize that you were participating in a coup. You had no idea.
Yeah. Silly me. One of my previous deployments, I was helping this guy by being deployed to a theater where I was actually engaging in conflict in Syria. I was helping this guy go against the Trump's orders. Man, I wish I'd known that.
Yeah. So you got
But let's go further down there. I got more things I want to say about what they say in this article. Keep going.
Okay. So even as he praises the president's support of what he describes as a successful realpolitik approach to the region, he acknowledges that his team routinely misled senior leaders about troop levels.
Committed treason.
That's or a military coup. One of the things. Which I guess that's both. We were always playing shell games to not make clear to our leadership how many troops we had there, Jeffrey said in an interview. So he's not just incriminating himself there. He's also saying, I had help. I had lots of help. It was the whole State Department. We all did it.
All of his undersecretaries, everyone who was aware of what he was doing, helping him produce these reports, because he didn't write them himself, right? He has a team that does that. All of them brought up on charges. Every last one of them.
So this kind of reminds me of the FBI, the Russiagate, the Obamagate stuff, where it's like, okay, well, maybe it was just one or two FBI. Just no, it's like, okay, as more and more comes out, it's like, okay, like the entire FBI had to be in on Obamagate and like illegally surveilling the Trump campaign, like that. There's just too many people that had to be involved. Like, how many people do you think had to be involved in this? Like, it wasn't just this one guy. I mean, this must have been dozens or more people.
Now, to be fair, it is in the Pentagon where they have a large civilian bureaucracy that helps do these things. It's not the military that's necessarily doing this. He himself is a civilian. He has a staff that is both civilian and military.
This is like really absurd because we pay so much money for the military for reasons, better or worse. The military has its own intelligence apparatus, which is redundant to the CIA and the NSA.
Keep pointing out, my job is redundant.
Yes, I know. It's hold on a second. Huh?
starting to feel attacked.
I know. It's redundant to other intelligence agencies that we also have, and all of these intelligence agencies are like the CIA knows what Trump's public goals are. They probably know what the real level of troops are in the region because they also operate in that region among other regions, and they need to have accurate statistics so that they can run operations there. And they must know, that that stuff's going on, and they're also not saying, hey, Office of the President, like, by the way, like, our intel's conflicting with what your State Department's telling you. Like, maybe we need to reconcile that and figure out what's going on here. So you've got a bunch of other intel agencies that are just, I guess they're too fucking busy, looking through, looking to see what you're saying on Twitter and making sure that you're not kidnapping the governor of Michigan. Well, none of you guys would because you're not Antifa. But we got all of this stuff that we pay for, and apparently, again, all of this information is meant, or all of these organizations are meant to get intelligence. They're an intelligence community, and yet they've utilized all of that intelligence power to lie to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and make it so that he cannot operate in the world. Like, that is so, I can't even believe that. Like, it's so ridiculous. Why? Because that's why I'm asking, like, how many people are involved in this? Because you've got not just this group that was actively lying to the Trump administration. You have all of the other intelligence agencies, including several branches of military intelligence, that I can't imagine that they wouldn't realize. They're like, hey, we do have troops there, actually. Because, like, they need to have accurate numbers on the world deployment. And they don't go tell the president, like, hey, actually, you're getting conflicting information over here. Here's the updated values. Like, what's the point of military intelligence at this point? What's the point of the CIA? What's the point of the NSA?
Well, like, for the military intelligence guys at the unit level, like, their job consists of briefing what the threats are on a certain mission and what are the conditions, the political, geopolitical conditions that you're going into. They have nothing to do with briefing the president. So that individual person.
Yeah, no, but like somebody in their level, like, again, somebody above them, like there's several silos here, and
right.
Like all of these silos individually decided, like, we're not going to rock the boat and, like, correct the numbers.
There's a layer of civilian leadership between the president and actual military intelligence usually. There's an entire staff that does intelligence briefings and military briefings for the president that are almost exclusively civilian.
Well, if you're gonna have civilian, so I live under the Constitution, mostly. I was under the impression that the military, the only civilian leader of the military was the president. That was the top of the military.
Well, Secretary of Defense, civilian. Secretary of the Air Force.
Secretary of Defense. No. Those are not constitutional positions.
Oh,
Those are positions that were created that were meant to be avatars of certain aspects of presidential power. They are aspects of the presidential authority. They are not themselves autonomous constitutional entities.
So yes, that could be changed, but just the current state of it now is we have this barrier, artificial barrier of civilian leadership in between the president and the
but this guy, this Jeffrey guy, he's not one of the secretaries. He's just a random.
Right, but so there's multiple bureaucracies. He actually has an intelligence background, so he's been in the revolving door of
so my point is that the current setup is severely unconstitutional. We have unelected civilians making military decisions. Like, that is
without the consent of the president or Congress.
Well, in direct opposition to them,
right.
Which is even worse. It's not just ignoring; it's direct opposition. That's a pretty big problem, and I think that has to qualify as sedition, some kind of attempted coup. If we're gonna have civilians, some kind of buffer layer, if that's these certain secretaries or whatever that are again they've been created to embody aspects of presidential power, so it's still within a constitutional framework.
I think they're there because they submit loyalist control over the military.
Oh yeah, I
because-
know that they do that, but I'm just saying, like, just looking at it objectively, this random ambassador Jeffrey guy, like, he doesn't have any constitutional authority to be in that layer there. And if we're going to have civilians in that layer, there needs to be steep consequences for things like this. It can't just be like, oh well, like, oh, you got us this time, sorry, like, oh, I see what you did there, you almost had a coup, like, I got you though.
2020 has been the year of coups, apparently, plus the last 4 years. This is just one of their many little coups trying to make Donald Trump's presidency ineffective or to actually remove him from office. The reason why he needs to win these appeals is because the entirety of the establishment, both right and left, doesn't want him to be the president. And then they're trying to use their force of politics, not the, actually arguing in good faith. You just use the blunt force of the bureaucracy to remove him. Like, he won, and they never let him actually be president.
Yeah. So let's see here. So all right. So he said, "quote We were always playing games to not make clear to our leadership how many troops we had out there."
Playing games with people's lives. You don't play games with war. You don't send American soldiers overseas to die in a country that doesn't want them there for no defined goal.
Yeah, you were the shell. You were the shell he was playing games with. I mean, like, you specifically were among the probably thousands of soldiers that he was just moving pieces around on an Excel sheet, grinning to himself, "Ooh, I got the orange man bad."
American lives are not something to play games with. And if that's your opinion, then you deserve a heavy punishment.
One of the sad things about the story is it's not been picked up very much. It's in this Defense One, which is not a super large publication. Some people have picked up on it. Actually, I just watched through Tucker Carlson his episode tonight. Tucker brought this up. He actually went through it pretty thoroughly. So hopefully now that Tucker's brought it up, that will have boosted it out there, and more people will start seeing this and getting outraged about it. There needs to be. That's the only way that you get consequences from this. But we'll see what goes on there. Okay, so they're playing games to make sure that Orange Man doesn't know how many troops they had out there. Jeffrey said in an interview, the actual number of troops in northeast Syria is, quote, a lot more than the roughly 200 troops Trump initially agreed to leave there in 2019. So like, Trump's like essentially like, not that we had a declared war in Syria, but like he's undeclaring an undeclared war and like pulling the troops that are, in theory are unconstitutionally or extra constitutionally stationed there without having the congressionally approved authorization to be there in that capacity. That's maybe another conversation. But Trump's trying to pull them out, and if we want to send them back, then Congress has to go through the process of declaring war. Trump's not playing games with the lives. He's not playing games with just creating war wherever he feels like it in the world. And that's what Trump's trying to do. And these guys are blocking Trump for trying to reestablish some constitutionality with how the military is conducted.
Someone, one of my wife's followers from another country, who is still not a citizen here, but who is now living here, just came here recently, was upset that Trump was talking about removing troops from the Middle East and wanted Biden to be president because he was likely to send them back to fight in Syria, like Kamala Harris has said that we need to re-engage there, which just means go back to war there. And this foreigner was saying that the reason why it was so important that we have Biden is because we have unfinished business in Syria. I'm like, I was livid about that as well. What do you mean we have unfinished business? First off, you aren't a fucking American. You don't tell us what is our business. Second, what is the business in Syria? Fighting to overthrow a tyrant by funding and arming terrorists, and that also hate us? What is our business there? Bombing more cities, killing more civilians, losing more American lives? it's kind of impossible to know who are the good guys and the bad guys there, because there's a whole bunch of different tribes, all of which hate us, but some of us on a conditional basis are willing to work with us as long as we're shooting their enemies. But they just as likely will shoot us in the back. There's no point for us to be there, and you don't have a right to tell us what is our business. You definitely don't have a right to go against Congress and go against the president and force us into a war. And all the lives have been lost in Syria and the Middle East because of this guy refusing to pull them out and convincing the president there was only 200 soldiers there in a role that was just to advise and arm and train. All those lives are on his hands, and he should be taken to a military court and held responsible for treason for all the lives he's killed. Okay. Over the last year, it might seem to like some people that not as bad because 1,000 soldiers got maimed, 100 got killed on our side because it happened over a year period. But there's really no moral difference between him doing the effect of his lies causing those 1,000 injuries and 100 deaths over a year, as if he were to lie about one incident and those lives being lost and those injuries being caused in 1 hour. There's no moral difference. If someone lied to the president and made it cause a decision that was unnecessary, that resulted in 100 unnecessary deaths and 1,000 maimings, you would call for blood from that person that misled the president to make that decision, right? But then people think it's a joke because that same effect happened over a year.
I do gotta say to Mikatan on YouTube, you must be trolling, because this isn't a pro-Trump segment. This is just a anti-civilian leadership trying to take over the military segment. We also spent 2 hours on Wednesday night going over how conservatives spreading fake news on Twitter are idiots, and then another half hour tonight ripping Trump for spreading around fake news. I think we're doing pretty good on anti-bias there. I mean, I could be wrong, but like we spent an inordinate amount of time this week going over how Trump and conservatives are stupid. So that must be trolling. You must be trolling. Yeah. All right, so Trump's abruptly announced withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria remains perhaps the single most controversial foreign policy move during his first.
With who? What? The soldiers who want to go home, or the families of soldiers who want them home? Or how about the people who don't want us being involved in never-ending, what, is it 20 years now? 20 years of war and with zero achievements. We're wasting billions of dollars that could have been spent at home. You complain. You piss and moan about all the social programs you want to fund in America while you are pissing away billions of dollars on a fruitless war with no defined goal to fight for a country that hates us. No, you can't. This is not controversial. What's controversial is the fact that you are willing to lie to the American people and the president and cause a continuation of a pointless war. That is what's controversial. The fact that you don't see that, you think that Trump wanting peace is controversial. You are insane. What happened to the left-wing party, the Democrats, that wanted peace? You have, just despite Trump, you've become the monsters, the warmongers that you said that you opposed. Now, honestly, in all honesty, you've been warmongers for a very long time. You just had really good advertising to try to convince Americans that you weren't. But you have to know that it is not controversial to want us to not be involved in wars around the world, that for us to not be trying to do follow the failed policy of nation building. How many nations have been built with using the policy of nation building? They didn't immediately collapse. I'm waiting.
None. So single most controversial foreign policy move during his first 4 years in office. And for Jeffrey, quote, the most controversial thing in my 50 years in government. The order first handed down in December.
This is spying on a presidential candidate. That wasn't a bigger deal.
Yeah, that's fair. So the order to withdraw was handed down in December of 2018. It led to the resignation of former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. Good riddance. It catapulted Jeffrey, then Trump's special envoy for Syria, into the role of special envoy in the counter-ISIS fight when it sparked the protest resignation of his predecessor, Brett McGurk.
We don't learn our lessons. We just don't. Our intervention in the Middle East created ISIS, and now to go against the Bashar al-Assad regime, we are now funding and equipping another group that is exactly like ISIS.
Well, and where did why did we make ISIS by accident? Because we were fighting the Taliban or Al Qaeda. I can't remember which one. But then why were we fighting the Taliban and Al Qaeda? Well, because we were fighting a Desert Storm in the decade before that. Like, it's just every decade we just always go through the next one. My dad fought in Desert Storm, and then, I didn't join the military because I'm a pussy. But I could have fought in the leftovers that were recreated after the mess that he left, and then the mess that we're leaving. For my generation, you got kids who were born after 9/11, like a year or more after 9/11 at this point. And they're over there fighting now, and it's so ridiculous. Every generation, and their kids are going to be fighting whatever the fuck the new ISIS is, because that's what they're working on creating now. It'll probably be the Kurdish ISIS is probably what we're probably going to end up looking at now. But you got the way to stop that is to pull out. Staying in is not helping it, and Trump magically had a good plan for, maybe not magic, maybe it was by design, a good plan for how to pull out and not have the whole thing collapse immediately. And he was leveraging the economy in a way that we'd never seen before, that was able to keep stuff propped up in the region without as many boots on the ground. It seemed to be going further and further. There was stability in other parts of the region with the new peace deals that was going to inevitably cascade into a better economy for the Middle East. And anytime that there's a better economy, well, maybe there's not as much reason to go blow shit up when you've got, a paycheck coming in and there's bread at the store. One of the reasons that drives the insanity of the Middle East and these terrorist cults it's just the fact that there's not stuff to be had over there. It's just fighting over.
To live for.
Yeah, it's fighting over the rubble that have been left behind over the course of like decades and decades of endless wars and incursions over there. Some of those necessary, sure. Do I particularly am I going to pretend like my heart is bleeding for the poor citizens over there who would, again, just as likely to shoot you in the back as they are to shoot alongside you? No, it's not. My disappointment and disgust in this is just the waste of American resources and blood and treasure. It's unnecessary, and it just creates more problems. And it is this ridiculous transfer of wealth from the American taxpayer to literally every other part of the world as much as possible.
Yeah, we don't need to be the world's police. And they argue later on in this article that the point of having us there, the reason why we have to be there, is that ISIS is not created or doesn't come back. First off, that is hilarious for you to say that. It was our intervention in the first place that created ISIS. Us being there is what created ISIS. And if ISIS comes back because Russia takes over control and it becomes the weight over their neck, that's fine. It's not our country. We don't have to go and kill every terrorist in every country around the world. Does the UK have to come to America to fight Antifa? No, that's our problem. UK can fuck off. We have our own police. We can deal with our own problems.
Yes.
We don't have to go fight the terrorists in the UK because you know what? They're a grown-up country. They can fucking do it themselves. You know what? Syria, if they have terrorists, it's probably because their culture allowed for the creation of a terrorist group. How about you let them fix their own problem, do their own housekeeping? We don't need to police other countries.
And realistically, from a really cold utilitarian perspective, us doing this only prolongs these kinds of fights. So had we not intervened at any point in the last 50 years in the Middle East, now certainly if they're leaving the sandbox and coming outside to come find us, we need to do something about it. But us intervening there for nation building, it only prolongs this unrest and this instability. We just keep them teetering on the edge by continuously repicking which rebel group we want to be friends with this century or this decade, and we'll arm them, then they can fight it out, and then the next decade it's like, you know what, you guys kind of suck now. We're gonna try out with this new freedom fighter group, and we just keep rotating it, and it's really cruel. Whereas if we hadn't intervened, they might have hot conflict for 5 or 6 years, but it would eventually stabilize with a winner. Now, whether or not we'd be happy with that winner is, again, that gets to a foreign policy debate. But again, from a cold utilitarian perspective, it's cruel to take that 5 or 6 year hot period and extend it as long as possible over the course of a couple of decades, and just have it be generation after generation after generation being in this just perpetual state of unease and imbalance. And it's not good for them. It's not good for us. It's not good for the world economy. In a capitalist sense. It's certainly fantastic if you have a centralized banking system and you need a place to dump all the money you're printing. That's a great way to do it, is just knock down a bunch of buildings so you have to rebuild them all the time. But as for America first kind of mentality, as for Western values, as for humanity in general, it's not good for us to be over there like that. And Trump, the American people wanted an end to this. We were tired of it. We wanted an end to this. We elected Trump. Trump was working on doing it. He was trying his best. And these rogue civilians taking control, they think that they are all powerful. They did everything in their ability to keep this going as long as possible. They did it so long that now we've got Biden coming in, and he's going to restart the whole machine as quickly as he possibly can, I'm sure. And, having had Biden be in the previous administration that accidentally or purposefully created ISIS, I would imagine that the new ISIS that's attempting to reconstitute, I would imagine that Joe Biden's going to, quote unquote, accidentally help that along quite a bit. It's important to remember that Joe Biden's been wrong on every major and minor foreign policy decision in the last 48 years. And that was especially including his term as the vice president. So there is no evidence to believe. I say without evidence that there will be unlikely for Joe Biden to change that trend in the next 4 years. And right now, there's a lot of ways to get Syria wrong. There's not a lot of ways to get Syria right. Trump was getting it right. And realistically, it's as simple as just pulling out. Make it their problem. We can't be there forever. They gotta figure it out on their own.
Completely agree. So, and the other concern they say in this article is they are worried that Russia will take over and gain influence in the area. First off, where were we before the war in Syria? We had Bashar al-Assad, who was supported by and who supported Russia and was doing trade with their energy sector with them, right? And so that's where we started at. Now, all these years later, Russia is still friends with Bashar al-Assad, and he is not removed from office. We have made no ground. We've only lost money and people, and we have funded. He probably hates us way more now, if anything. So we've gained nothing, but we've lost thousands of lives and many billions of dollars. And they want to continue that failed policy, right? So if we do nothing, just leave, we are no worse off foreign policy-wise in their mind than we were years ago when we first went to war in Syria.
Yeah, I know that there's this like specter of if we leave, somebody else will take in. That's what the rhetoric Joe Biden's got right now is, the U.S. needs to take the lead on, I guess, war again. I don't know that that's necessarily the U.S. taking the lead, because we're certainly not leading anything over there. We're just there again, wasting as much American resources as possible, finding but. This might be a little conspiratorial. I'll try to think of a better way to phrase it, but this is essentially, it looks like a, kind of like almost a conspiracy operation by the Democrats to take good conservative patriots, put them into the shredder, and just have them get killed off by all the Syrians over there. It's kind of a from the Democrats' perspective, it's not a bad plan. That appears to be what's going on over here, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
I think that their goal is less about let's kill conservatives. That is effectively what's happening here. I think that all they care about is expanding their wealth and power. And it is true that a lot of their special interests that fund them, and probably a lot of their nepotism, all their families involved in those companies benefit from both war and the energy sector. They want to the economic effects of this war. They want the fact that there'll be more arms being purchased and sold. Because we're actually selling weapons in great amounts to these terrorist groups, right?
Yeah.
So we are making money as far as the military-industrial complex is, as well as opening up, the access to those resources to the Western world would benefit a lot of people in power. And they're willing to sacrifice all of the American soldiers' lives because it doesn't affect them. They don't care about the little people. All they care about is what the effect would be for them.
We've got like specific examples of that from the I know it was like a quadrillion years ago, but there was that goofy laptop that Hunter Biden had with all those funny emails on it. But we also know from outside sources as well, publicly available sources that corroborate it. Joe Biden's brother made millions of dollars, quote unquote, building houses in Iraq during the Obama years. And so you got Joe Biden knocking the buildings down, and then you got his brother going over there getting paid big old government contracts to go rebuild them. What do you think that he's about to do? He needs to make that dough. So he's going to send you guys over there, have you guys knock down some buildings. A couple months later, his brother's going to come in and rebuild them poorly. And taxpayer gets to pay for it twice. A lot of fun.
So war is very profitable, unfortunately. Extremely profitable for a lot of people. And so it creates a perverse incentive to do policies that will result in more war. And they'll even justify, some of them even convince themselves that this is actually a moral thing. Like, oh, we're actually there to help people by going there and forcing democracy on them, because democracy is actually a far more, a better government, and it'll be better for all the people. So us doing this is good for them. Or at least it's the argument they'll make to anyone they're trying to argue for why they are, authorizing a war. But in reality, no. If you don't have a culture that supports democracy, then you won't have democracy. You can't force it upon people. It has to be supported by the culture. And if the culture swings, even if our culture in America swings away from a democracy, away from the principles for which made our government, the government can disappear. We can lose our constitutional republic very easily. All it requires is one generation of people no longer believing in it.
Yep. All right. Let's see if we can get through this. So, for Jeffrey, the incident was far less cut and dry, but it is ultimately a success story that ended with U.S. troops still operating in Syria, denying Russian and Syrian territorial gains, and preventing ISIS remnants from reconstituting. So that's like an opinion where he's like, well, we needed to do this because if we had if we had done what Trump said, Trump's a big dummy, he's a big stupid poopy head, and if we had done that, then the Russians would have taken over Syria.
Who cares?
And again, who fucking cares? One of the things I was trying to say earlier, but I went off in a different tangent by accident, or by design. Who does care if the Russians get that spot? We have spent just, again, actually we're up into the trillions of dollars now in this region. Russia can't pay that. The Russian economy can't support that. If Russia's such a goddamn problem, why wouldn't we want them wasting as much resources as we're wasting in that region, having as much of their troop depletion as what we're having? That would be really great for us if Russia would just go beat its head bloody against Iraq right now. That would be fantastic for us. If Russia is sinking all of its productive capacity into this region and all of its military resources, and they're all getting used up and depleted, that's really great for us. That's double great, because we're not depleting our resources. And if Russia ever decided to get uppity, well, they would have a depleted military, like we do. So it's just ridiculous of this idea that like Russia. I know they're like, oh well, Russia wants to get there so they can take the oil, and and then they're gonna sell it to Europe, and it's like, okay, well, like I don't know, like who cares? We'll deal with that with NATO. Europe's already buying stuff. They're already buying oil and energy from Russia anyways, even though Trump's been calling them out on that. That's a problem for Europe. That's honestly, it's a problem for Europe. They'll have to figure it out. Okay, so, and I believe what you were saying earlier, Dyer, is that even with us guarding it, they still have energy deals with Russia anyways. So, what's it matter?
Yeah, it changes nothing.
Yes. Okay, so in 2018 and again in October of 2019, when Trump repeated the withdrawal order, the president boasted that ISIS was, quote, defeated. But each time the president was convinced to leave a residual force in Syria, and the fight continued. So every time Trump said that we are done, we saw this, and a lot of conservatives were upset about it. I remember this throughout the last few years, is every time Trump said, okay, we're pulling out, and that'd be a few months later, and we didn't pull out, which was disappointing. Let's see here. So what Syria withdrawal? There was never a Syria withdrawal, Jeffrey said. When the situation in northeast Syria had been fairly stable after we defeated ISIS, Trump was inclined to pull out. In each case, yeah, because, when you're done, you pull out. In each case, we then decided to come up with 5 better arguments for why we needed to stay, and we succeeded both times. That's the story. That's the okay. Okay, so officially,
They were arguments. They were lies. He
yes,
didn't make a really good argument. He made it a lie, and convinced the president based off of the lie.
I see you over there trying, Brett. All right. Officially, Trump last year agreed to keep several hundred U.S. troops, somewhere between 200 and 400, according to varying reports at the time, stationed in northeast Syria to secure, quote, secure oil fields held by the United States Kurdish allies in the fight against ISIS. We're going to be all over the Kurds pretty soon here. So, it is generally accepted that the actual number is now higher than that. Anonymous officials put the number at about 900 today. Why do we need why doesn't the military just know where you guys are? Like that.
They do. They're probably not allowed to say it though. Like, I can tell you how many soldiers are deployed from my unit to any deployed location.
Yeah, but why isn't military intelligence telling Trump hey, there's guys over there and gals and gals.
I would assume it's not in their lane.
But why isn't it? Why isn't it? What, that's what
we have that barrier.
Well, no. You guys have an oath to protect the country from enemies, foreign and domestic. If there is domestic officials that are attempting to control the military outside the purview of the president, it is your duty, your constitutional obligation to protect the country from that domestic threat. And, it doesn't need to be as crazy as going and doing an execution. You could just go tell the president.
Here's why. Okay, so there is going to be a level of military service that would be in the position to do this, right? But if you take my unit level, or even the a couple levels up, they don't deal with the president in any possible way, and what their responsibilities are, what their need to know is not in that lane, right? So the majority of the military would have no
Well, I'm not talking about the majority of the military, but there's not like
There's some, yes.
There's not this just massive gulf between, you know, your one bar private and, you know, the top security analyst. Like, there's not like just nothing in between that. Like, you're still talking about hundreds of people that are in these positions that would be able to at least contact somebody at the White House, and they would be able to see what's happening, and they are uniformed military officers or whatever. There is I get that. I'm not talking about, don't bring that up again, Dyer. I'm not talking about the operational guys at the unit level, obviously, but there is still hundreds of people that are in somewhere in that capacity that would be able to contact either Trump or VP Pence or the Secretary of whoever. There is people there. I'm not talking about the people
Well,
at
there's
the
at least
unit
an
level.
entire office that worked for this guy.
Yeah.
That was in a position to talk to him.
Yeah. So
Which is probably he probably has a staff in the hundreds.
yeah. I mean, we had some blowhard army guy, some fat ass, you know, he blew the whistle that Trump had a phone call. You know, we can't get some whistleblowers to Congress, you know, calling up their senator. And again, you don't got to go through the president's office if you're getting blocked that way. You can go call a congressman. You got several Senate and House bodies that are designed to handle and high intelligence, high security stuff like this that you can contact. Every soldier's in someone's district. There is routes to do this, and I'm not talking about the unit level guys. It's not every single person, but there is got to be hundreds to thousands of people that knew and had the ability to go tell somebody, to go do their duty to defend against a domestic threat of civilians attempting to take control of the military outside their constitutional boundaries. And I just sat there and watched it. And again, we got the fat ass Vidner, or whatever the fuck his name was, from the army, who blew the whistle that Trump talked to the Ukrainian president. And then we had, 6 months of impeachment came off of that. We couldn't get somebody to say, hey, hey Trump, somebody, these guys are lying to you. There's actually 2,000 troops there, not the 200 that you thought there was. They're lying to you. We couldn't get a fucking whistleblower for that. Are you fucking kidding me? Across how many different branches too? I mean, that's what I mean by hundreds to thousands of people.
Firsthand knowledge of what was being directly lied about, but there was at least 100 people. I don't want to say it's kind of sounding like you're saying the entirety of the military should have been aware of this. That's why I was bringing that up, because there probably is a
it was more than none of them
with a need to know, and actually have know exactly what that guy was telling the president. Like, I'm not reviewing very few people are probably reviewing his briefs to the president.
Well, again, I'm not talking about the unit level guys. That's what I just said. I went over that, but that still leaves a lot of goddamn people. That still leaves a lot of them.
A lot of people are put in power in Pentagon hated Trump, and he should have fired them immediately. And the theory that he didn't fire them because of the Russia collusion investigation, I don't know. I would have fired them anyway, because I think it's far more damaging to not fire them and let them do what they've done here, lie and affect the policy of the United States. I think it's far more damaging to let that happen than the talking points the Democrats would have had just because he fired somebody. I don't think that really helped them.
I gotta wonder too if there's not some accounting fraud going on here too, because I don't you guys are you guys occupy space, you actually are physical entities, and your equipment has a physical 3-dimensional presence that requires somewhere to put it. Where do you hide 900, 1,000, 2,000 soldiers at? Where do you just hide them at?
Okay, so here's an example. I'm going to give you a hypothetical, all right?
Okay.
So this is purely hypothetical and not true in any possible way. Now imagine, so he wants to hide that we have, 500 special operators working in Syria. Well, instead you say, oh, they're stationed to Qatar Air Force Base, and that's where they're serving. They're providing security to the region by being on call to things that might happen in the region, and they're just close to the possible threats by being in Qatar. In reality, as soon as they may be like initially stationed there, but then they get forward deployed to Syria. They're actually physically in Syria, but they're stationed at Qatar.
Which isn't that like a fraudulent report? Wouldn't that be allocating the financial resources to the wrong place? Like, wouldn't there have to be some kind of additional fraud to cover that up?
I don't know if that counts as fraud. Maybe. I just know that it's going to appear on paper that they are not in Syria, and their mission isn't Syria direct. It's just Syria.
Yeah, but that would mean that if there is no mission in Syria, but there really is, like, the money's got to come from somewhere, which means that the money would have to be allocated to the place where the paper mission is, but the money would actually be being used for the actual mission.
Trump's not looking at the budget.
I know he's not, but somebody is, and I'm not necessarily saying that they would necessarily realize what's going on there, but at some point, like a post-mortem investigation of this, I don't see why it wouldn't reveal massive amounts of accounting fraud on behalf of the United States military. I don't see how you are able to conduct hiding troop locations from the person in charge of the troops and not have the accounting be funny.
So they might be completely honest about the funding, just not be telling the president about it.
Well, that's on Congress. Congress needs to be figuring out where this is going at.
Yes,
I mean, you would think that maybe Congress would have a little bit of curiosity as to, it's strange. We have the same. We only got 200 people in we only got 200 soldiers deployed, but the cost is still like there's 2,000 there. That's strange, and none of them were curious about it because it's just fucking zeros to them.
Well, yeah, I mean. Also, the budget might be, oh, we're spending money on this other thing that sounds legitimate and doesn't sound like we're in Syria, right? It's, we're just doing, let's go back to that false scenario, definitely not a real thing. We're providing security to the region by just having someone on call, and then it costs money to have them deployed there, right?
What if F-35s weren't as expensive as we thought they were, and the extra money just goes into Syria?
I would not be surprised.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So it is generally accepted that the actual number of deployed troops is now higher than the 200. Anonymous officials put that number at about 900 today, but the precise figures are classified and remain unknown. Even it appears to members of the Trump administration's it appears to members of Trump's administration keen to end the so-called forever wars. What do you mean so-called? Like, why would it be like they're literally forever? Like,
they have no exit plan.
Fact check true. Okay, so as he exits public service again, Jeffrey is hardly derisive of the divisive president. Oh, that's cute. Alliteration. The career ambassador's 2018 decision to serve in the Trump administration despite his political opposition to the president and to champion his policies on the way out the door is on brand for an official described by colleagues as the consummate apolitical public servant. Jeffrey offers no they're getting like weird words now. It's just like all like fluff language. I don't know what the Trump campaign was like the Trump administration was thinking, like hiring somebody who had signed the letter. Let's see here. So it says Jeffrey stood by his decision to sign the 2016 open letter that said that Trump was, quote, erratic and acts impetuously. Like, why wouldn't you just cross-reference that open letter as the Trump administration? Just like, hey, anybody on here is like probably not going to support us. We should probably just, let bygones be bygones. Like, why were they pulling him in there? And again, that's That's not on Trump for like all these like micro hiring decisions, but it is on Trump for hiring. A lot of his advisors over the years have been establishment advisors. They've been war hawk advisors, and they have assisted with making sure that other people like Jeffrey would get into these kinds of positions so that they could do these things and make sure that the wars continued. We saw that with Trump's infamously amazing pick of John Bolton, and then seeing how that flamed out. That was not the greatest. Again, did I talk about this in the show, or did I talk about this before about Flynn? I think I talked about that before the show.
Yeah, before the show.
So, I'll come back to this in a second. I'm just setting us up for a second. So Michael Flynn, we all know the story about Michael Flynn. Not much reason to go into that, but I do know that one of the theories as to why the Obama administration targeted Flynn in the way that they did, that they weaponized the intelligence state against him, is because Flynn was again, I don't know about this for sure, but like what the theory was is that Flynn was a sharp guy. He understood how the intelligence state worked. He understood how the military politics worked. He was all aware of that. And they were worried that Flynn would be able to see through the Obamagate stuff in the intelligence agencies very quickly, and that he'd get to the bottom of that like that. And he would be able to figure out that they were trying to weaponize the intelligence state against their political adversary. And then the Obamagate stuff would have been discovered like almost immediately. I also think that, so if Flynn had stayed in, I think that we would have gotten through this whole 4 years of Russia, scandal after scandal after scandal after non-scandal. We would have gotten through that a lot quicker if Flynn had been there, because he would have been able to figure out what to look for. Then we also probably would have had Flynn be able to see stuff like this in the DOD, being able to see when people are, given Trump the runaround on troop movements and stuff like that. I think Flynn would have been smart enough to see that, because I think he was going to be the National Intelligence Advisor or National Security Advisor, something like that.
Yeah, security, I think it was.
So he would have been purview to all of this information, and I almost guarantee you, being a military man himself, he would have looked at that stuff and been like, you guys are feeding me a bunch of bullshit. Where's the real intel? And he would have been able to figure that out. And so none of this would have happened either if you had Flynn in there. So the damage that Obama and Biden did on their way out last time was pretty severe getting Flynn. Like that was, just as an objective like reviewing of that, like I guess good on them. Like that was a good piece to take off the board. Very unfortunate for the rest of America though. But this kind of stuff wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't have had these guys be able to do this if you had Flynn there. I really think that.
It kind of shows how the forward thinking of their conspiracy.
And it shows that Trump did have a pretty good decision to pick Flynn. It's just that it didn't work out. Okay, so let's see here. I know what I did in 2016. I do not disagree with that, Jeffrey said, a former U.S. ambassador to Iraq. I was following closely the situation in Iran, Iraq, and Syria, and I was appalled that we didn't have more coherent policy. This wasn't a political decision. What do you mean a coherent policy? Like this is part of the establishment. We haven't had this idea that we've had a coherent strategy ever in any of those places. Trump did have a coherent strategy. It was pull the fuck out, because we're just sitting there with no strategy. You guys are getting shot at. I got to pay for it all. We're wasting money, wasting blood. It's so ridiculous. That is none of that was a coherent policy. And Trump actually pulling out, that's a decision being made. Well, it's a good or bad one. It's at least a decision. It's a coherent policy of, we don't know what we're doing, we're pulling out. That's coherent. It's, staying there when you don't know what you're doing. And, it's great for Jeffrey. He can sit in his office in the Pentagon. I'm sure it's nice in there. I got people like Dyer sending him out there. It's like, okay, well, it's just a shell I'm moving around. Like, oh, fuck, that shell got a bullet through it. Oh well, there's more. We'll just send more out there. Not a big deal. You got him sitting in his office just moving pieces around, and that's not a coherent policy. That's I don't know what that is, but that's not a coherent policy. So that's ridiculous that he would say that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Jeffrey now says that Trump's modest and transactional approach to the Middle East has yielded a more stable region than either of his predecessors and more transformational policies. So now he's saying, well, Trump didn't do too bad of a job. It's pretty stable now. So, maybe we're the idiots. George,
we're the baddies.
Yes, you are. Yeah, take doing a coup with the military. Yes, you're the baddies. President George W. Bush's 2003 State of the Union speech heralding the seismic U.S. intervention into Iraq, and President Barack Obama's 2009 speech in Cairo proclaiming a, quote, new beginning with the Muslim world represent an approach to the Middle East that, quote, made things worse and weakened us, Jeffrey said. So he's saying that, the Obama era policy was weak and it made things worse off. Maybe it would have been nice to hear from him about Joe Biden. Maybe some blown whistles there. Let's see here. So Trump administration, he said he looked at the Middle East through a geostrategic lens and kept his focus on Iran, Russia, and China while keeping the metastatic disease of Islamic terror in check. You know how you take care of something that's metastasized? A lot of radiation. Jeffrey believes... What's that?
I said yes.
Jeffrey believes Trump has achieved a kind of political and military stalemate in a number of different cold and hot conflicts. Yes, that is the Trump doctrine has been very successful, producing a situation that is about the best any administration could hope for with such a messy and volatile region. Who made it messy and volatile? In much of Syria, the remaining U.S. troops maintain a fragile stability. Although U.S. diplomats are still painstakingly working to resettle thousands of ISIS families and relocate foreign fighters still held by the Kurdish-led SDF, Jeffrey said that the humanitarian situation is slowly improving, and he has no concerns that the remaining detained ISIS fighters will escape. There's a really good way to make sure that they don't escape. In Iraq, Jeffrey credits the Trump administration with maintaining relations with the central government and constraining Iranian influence in Baghdad. Stalemates.
Fox, what's a good way to not find yourself financially and responsible for the many thousands of fighters that were just shooting your troops not too long ago, and also all of their family members, and that your responsibility to resettle them somewhere. You know how to avoid that responsibility?
Radiation.
Not be involved in the first place. Yeah. Why is it your problem that they now would be murdered if they go back to living in Syria because they fought a war against the government in Syria? The government and them both hate you, by the way. So you force yourself into this situation, and now
revolution has consequences.
Yeah. Hey, this is the consequence of their actions. Why is it your problem that terrorists die?
And this gets back to the Fox doctrine, which is my sandbox policy, where it's a problem when the baddies leave the sandbox and they come and try to do bad stuff over here or in Europe or wherever. That's a problem, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen. And that is one of the few purposes that the U.S. military actually has, is to protect us from that sort of stuff. And so the Fox doctrine, the sandbox policy, is they can do whatever the fuck they want in the sandbox. They aren't allowed to go over 500 feet. We will vaporize anything they put in the air. And if they want to leave their zone and try to travel to Europe or to the U.S. or anywhere else in the region, they also get vaporized. They can do whatever the fuck they want in their area. If they leave that area, it is atomized.
Completely agree. So we can still use drone strike and airstrikes to take out a threat that comes from their country, but we aren't their police force.
How do I invest in drones, by the way? Because I feel like stock in those are about to skyrocket.
Oh yeah, you're right. I mean, definitely Northrop Grumman. Wow, I said it wrong. Northrop Grumman. God damn it, man. You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yes.
Who else makes drones?
Lockheed. Does Lockheed make drones?
Lockheed makes drones. There's like 4 different companies that are competing for government contracts right now.
Honestly, I don't like it, but like, I mean, if you guys got some money to move around, I'd put it in like military stuff right now, like any kind of defense company. Like, for better or worse, we're about to use a lot of military resources. I got a hunch, I got a feeling that the Biden administration will have there'll be some blood shed.
So, because of the moral hazard, as well as because of I don't want it to look bad, I do not directly invest into any military contracting company. Though I do have mutual funds that probably do.
Dyer's secretly making millions of.
I would really hate to unintentionally look as though I am insider trading and war profiteering.
This whole show is a psyop. We're actually high level executives at all of the major defense contractors. So, you know, joke's on you.
That's the quiet part you say in your head.
That wasn't in my head? Fuck. All right, so let's see here. So Jeffrey said stalemate and blocking advances and containing is not a bad thing. So he's talking about how the Trump doctrine worked. That's what powerful countries, France and Britain. Why would he say the powerful countries? And the first one on the list is France. This guy was leading foreign policy. Jesus fucking Christ. All right, that's what powerful countries, France, Britain, and the United States failed to do in the 1930s. And then they discovered that they had to fight for their lives in really important places like Paris and the South China Sea and North Africa.
He called France, not only called France a powerful country, but also called France a powerful country in the context of World War II. Wow.
That's so... oh my God.
That makes it worse.
That's a whole episode that we could just do on that. All right, so it's like, quote, that's the nature of realpolitik and great power foreign policy. Jeffrey is an unorthodox view of Trump's foreign policy, to be sure. It comes at a moment when most mainstream national security professionals of both parties, including some former members of Trump's own administration, are openly condemning the president's policy of handling of American military and diplomatic affairs, because they think that peace is a failure. In particular, critics say that the 45th president has damaged American alliances, perhaps irreversibly, by creating peace among nations with his combative Twitter account and the peace among nations, and occasionally putative foreign policy like peace among nations. In one key example, Trump created a peace among nations, and then he also announced a troop withdrawal from Germany because Berlin wasn't meeting defense spending benchmarks. Yeah. So like, I don't understand this. Like, when we make an agreement with a country and then they don't do what their part of the agreement was, it's just like, yeah, but like, fucking deal with it. And then we don't do our part of the agreement. It's like, oh, how dare you?
They want us to be pushovers, and then everyone can take advantage of us, and that's good foreign policy for them.
Triumvirate, if you haven't gotten a mean tweet on Twitter, like, I don't think that you're qualified to say that. It is way worse than literal war and death. I've had to deal with like multiple wars and deaths.
Tell them about the PTSD. Tell them about the PTSD.
I have PTSD.
He has PTSD.
I have PTSD from Twitter. This is the mean stuff that they said. Side note on PTSD. Don Lemon unironically said, while he was crying, he actually cried on air a couple of times last week, but he actually said last week, while they very early announcing the Joe Biden presidency, that he thinks he's got PTSD from the last 4 years. Don Lemon thinks that he has post-traumatic stress disorder, a disorder infamous for being experienced by people who've been in combat situations fighting for Don Lemon's right to be a faggy news anchor. And I say that not because he's gay, but that getting blown up and having all of their friends killed and their arms blown off, and Don Lemon has PTSD because he screeched about the Orange Man for 4 years.
Let me put it this way: Don Lemon has not suffered a day in his life. He might be convinced that he is an oppressed person who is suffering under a white supremacist government, but he has never ever had any real obstacles in his life. He's from a wealthy family. He has wealth and power. He has powerful friends. He is insulated from the normal struggles of even American life. And he has no concept or understanding of what being in the military or being deployed or having actual struggles in his life are actually like. He has no idea. And that's why he has the willingness to say that what he's been through, which is nothing under a Trump, because what has Trump done to him? Say mean words occasionally about his party. Oh dear. Get over it, you pansy. Nothing seriously harmful has happened to him, and then because he has no understanding of what real struggles are like, that's why he's willing to relate them to PTSD. Like, oh my god, this guy is a fucking retard. It's an insult to everyone who's ever had PTSD. Anyone who's actually gone through real trials in their lives. It's an insult to say that he has struggled when he clearly has not.
Yeah, you got a combat vet, backfire car, and kind of freak out. Don Lemon, he just sees an orange. He's just like in the corner, like shaking.
Don't make me.
I know. All right, so let's see here. Where were we at here? Jeffrey, did I read through this part? Yes, I think I said mean stuff on Twitter. Okay, so Jeffrey said that there's no question that Trump has demanded a lot of U.S. allies both in Europe and in the Middle East, but he rolls his eyes at the notion that the U.S. alliances will crumble under pressure from the United States to do things like pay more for their own national defense or to do more to push back on Iran. Far from undermining Middle East allies, Jeffrey said, Trump has sought to build up our alliance system and basically stop nagging at them. I think I might be racist. Show that Washington has their back, including their domestic situations. They can do pretty much what they want, but they're going to have to step up and do things. This guy's like a super genius. Let's see here. In the Middle East, he said that the approach has won him friends, not enemies. He points to the historic political tightening between Israel and some of the Gulf monarchies. Nobody really wants to see President Trump go among all our allies in the Middle East, he said. The truth is, President Trump and his policies are quite popular among all of our popular states in the region. Name me one that is not happy. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that the peoples of the Middle East, to the extent that some of them are people, they are. I can't imagine that they're unhappy with these peace deals. This whole thing with these Israeli peace deals that have been just breaking out the last few months, there is a lot of the Abrahamic religions, which Islam is has its roots in there somewhere. There's a lot of historic sites all over the Middle East that are common to all the Abrahamic religions. And the Jews have some of them in Israel, and other Middle Eastern countries have some of the sites in their areas. And because of these peace deals, there has been there was a video of the first plane that was a direct flight from the UAE to Israel, I think it's Tel Aviv, and you had some Islamic people, Muslims, going there, and they were able to fly directly there. And they were able to go to this cultural site that, like, none of them have been able to fly directly to or to have a direct travel to ever in history. And it's just like crazy moment where, you know, yeah, they all still kind of hate each other, but like it was bringing back some of that unity of like, okay, like we got through this just hating each other for no reason, even though, you know, like the people probably they're probably not as rabid about it, but the administrations are. But it was just it's this crazy thing that you're able to actually see this now, where they're actually going to be able to go there. They're going to be able to go to Israel and see, okay, you know, the Jews aren't, you know, they're not eating babies and draining their blood and stuff like that. You know, they're kind of nice that they help
as far as they used to be.
I know, right? They you know, they'll let us hang out at the cultural sites. You know, we got them coming over here. Hey, you know what? Israel's got a lot of money over there for various reasons. They got a good economy. They got a lot of you know, industry and tech, and they've got a lot of good technology for water purification and stuff like that. You know, now they can start sharing that in the region, which is only going to increase the stability. I can't imagine that your average person who is relatively informed in the Middle East is like, yeah, I want to go back to the time when, you know, my building is just being vaporized by either the U.S. or this Islamic terror group or that Islamic terror group, or maybe Israel or maybe Russia, you know, or having that on your border. This idea, I don't know. It's just, I can't see any honest rebuke of the Trump doctrine in the Middle East.
Why would you do that?
Thank you, Slowpoke. Slowpoke gave us $2. He said, you are not allowed to say PTSD unless you saw someone get his head blown off in front of you or your face. Don Lemon head can go fuck himself with a rusty halberd. I don't know what that is, but I certainly don't know what a rusty one is.
Halberd?
Yeah, what is it?
It's a poleaxe.
Oh, is it better when it's not rusty? Preferably after FNN shuts down and he's out of a job. I agree. But I just don't see it's sort of like struggling to describe it because it just seems so like ridiculous. I don't see like an honest rebuke of what has gone on there. I can only see a dishonest rebuke that would, and that only works if you're telling low information, ill-informed people. So anybody who's watching the legacy media, obviously I'm talking to them. And you just have this like very dishonest take, and it only is effective with people who don't have any ability to critically think.
Yeah, but it does have an effect for them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because those people exist.
Do you want to like jump through parts of this article that you were interested in? Is there anything
you already
else?
got the parts I was most interested in.
Okay.
Actually.
I don't. Is it worth going through any more of this?
No, I think we hit all the points. To recap, this guy lied, committed treason, and even though he has some nice things to say about the president, I don't fucking care. He has. It's mostly due to him and his staff that we have lost additional American lives, that we have not pulled out of a war, and we continue to fund and arm terrorists, and we've kept ourselves engaged in a war when basically he's helped to prevent the president fulfilling one of his keystone promises. So this guy has committed treason, should go to jail, and everyone in his staff that was involved should as well. Cut and dry.
Yeah.
Also, their reasoning for why to justify him doing this is completely bunk, as I explained earlier.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if Russia's in charge of the area, and it doesn't matter if ISIS comes back. It doesn't matter to us. It's not our problem.
Yeah, some of those quotes down here at the bottom here where they kind of close it out is, let's see, I think the stalemate we've put together Trump put it together. You weren't there, Jeffrey. Shut up. That we've put together is a step forward, and I would advocate for it. And they said, you know, was explaining like what it was that he saw like during this interview. He said, quote, "I'm just telling you the reality as I saw it. I'm not trying to do favors to anybody because it's very important when the new team comes in. They don't say if it was made by Trump, it has to be bad. Orange Man bad. Yeah. So it was just." And this guy is not alone. He had, again, dozens of staffers at various levels that were helping him explicitly. There was every other department at the DoD and State Department that were complicit in this. You had, potentially hundreds of military personnel that were in locations, like placed in locations that could have whistleblown to the appropriate committees in Congress, to the White House, to their superiors. They could have documented it. You just had this. Oh, this is a swamp. This is a swamp. This is a military-industrial complex. Hard at work for your tax dollar.
Yeah, and I recently told my wife about the military-industrial complex, and she's still reeling over it.
I love Dyer's wife is like trying to get more informed about politics, and it's fun watching her like discover something for the first time where she's like, I can't believe that's how that. I was like, I know, like we can't believe that's how that is either. It's crazy, isn't it? If only everyone knew. Apparently there was a poll out today that which, I'm sure it was a really accurate poll because that's how polls work, right? That approximately 30% of verified Joe Biden voters would have not voted for Joe Biden had they been made aware of the Hunter Biden and the Joe Biden emails prior to them voting. So good job on Twitter. You nailed it. You got that all covered up, and you got Joe Biden that extra 30%. They said even if that had been as low as 3%, it would have swung for Trump in a landslide.
Yeah.
So, good job. Good job, everybody.
So, that in and of itself is.
I really think
that media malfunctions is fraud itself.
I really think the solution is just like secession. Like they can keep New York and LA and DC, and like we'll just. We'll remake DC somewhere else. We'll like pick some, a random farmland and wherever. There's plenty of federal lands actually that you could rebuild a.
Like 90% of Nevada.
Yeah, like there's plenty of federal lands that you could rebuild a federal district, if we, the other 48 states needed to move on.
Yeah.
That is an interesting feature as well. Normally, actually, I think universally, I don't think that there's ever been an example of a civil war in which the land area controlled was so different. I mean, you're talking about 98% of the land mass. Looking at it by county. Is red. I mean, maybe an equivalent number of people, but like the land is hard to hold land.
Yeah.
And when you've already got people who know the land, I don't think that you're gonna have I really don't think that the pincer movement from LA to New York is gonna work.
I doubt it.
I think it's gonna be a failure.
Plus, you think the Soy Boys can all even carry the guns that far? Come on.
Pretty heavy. They're heavy as like 10 boxes,
And they can't even carry a single box.
I can carry a fox.
Oh, fox. I think you said box.
I said both. I'm trying to confuse you. Alrighty. Well, I think that we did this stream like we did Syria, which means that we stayed in here way too long and it's time to pull out. We will not be here on Saturday. We will be back next week on a day that ends in Y. Dyer may or may not be here, but I'll be here, and we'll be discussing, or I'll be discussing, somebody will be discussing the just really historic level of failure No, I'm not gonna put it on Tim. It's not about Tim's failure. It's about me. It's about me being right about people like Tim. This will be a show about me and about why I'm right. Tim being wrong and me being right about Tim being wrong is like gonna be a side feature to it. But the primary thing that you'll take away from that show is that I'm right.
And not at all conceited.
No. It's only conceited when you're arrogant and wrong. If you're arrogant and right, you're just right.
Fair enough.
Like it's just like you just justified.
All right, we'll see you guys. Direwolf out.